Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. So glad to have you here today. We're going to go ahead and get started pretty soon and get the information out to you that you came here to get. All right. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to talk about this very important, very useful topic, why you can't say no even though you know better. I'm really looking forward to sharing some practical information on this topic that affects so many of you smart, savvy, health-loving people. Let me give you a breakdown of what to expect over the next 30 to 60 minutes here at the webinar. I am going to talk to you about the neuroscience and biology behind your craving and how your environment makes it even worse. I'm going to talk about what makes you vulnerable to these cravings in the first place, and then I'm going to give you what you really came here for, which is the strategies that you can employ right now to break free from the grip that your food cravings might have over you. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end, and I'm going to also present you with an offer, bonus offer at the end. So go ahead and stick around for that. Before I get into that, the neuroscience and the biology behind cravings and what drives us to eat certain things, even though they're not good for us, I want to tell you a little story about myself and why this topic's interesting to me. About 18 years ago or so, when I was a newbie dietitian, I was on fire with the excitement that came with the science of nutrition, a topic that I had been so interested in for so long. And I just wanted to shout from the rooftops and let people know how much better they could feel, how they could reverse or treat their chronic conditions, their pain, their obesity, their blood sugar, all these kinds of things by changing the way they ate. But imagine my surprise when I would meet with my patients at my first job at the Dallas VA hospital. Some patients would come in because their doctor sent them there with a new diagnosis or with the doctor knew they needed some help with their food and nutrition. And I thought, gosh, people will be so excited to hear that they can really help themselves through food instead of all these medications, that there's side effects and so on and so forth. And imagine my surprise when not everybody was so excited. You know, I'd have patients who would come in and say, darling, I've been eating this way my whole life and I am not going to change now. There was that group of individuals who just weren't interested in changing, and that's okay. That's perfectly acceptable response. But then there was this other group who they really wanted to be able to change. They really wanted to be able to live this idealistic life and diet and eating pattern, but they just couldn't imagine how they were going to get over their habits and their cravings and their experiences and expectations around food as it always had been. And so it was around that time that I really started to realize wanting to change, wanting to live a healthy lifestyle is not enough. It takes more. It takes more than desire and motivation. And since that time, I've done a lot of studying and reading, of course, to learn about what it does take. But this cartoon of Calvin and Hobbes really always reminds me of that feeling. So you can see in the first box, Calvin's sitting at his makeshift sort of lemonade stand, and his sign says that he's selling a swift kick in the butt for $1. And Hobbes wants to know how business is. And Calvin tells him that it's terrible and that he can't understand it. And Calvin says, you know, I can't understand it. Everybody I know needs what I'm selling. And that's kind of how I felt as a dietitian too. Gosh, you know, everybody really needs to eat healthy. How come business isn't what we're expecting. So I'm going to let you in on what it took me a long time to figure out. A lot of reading, a lot of studying, and a lot of working with people. Since that time, I've worked with thousands of patients, students, and personal clients to help them figure out what it's going to take for them. And here's what I found is that it's not about the food. Eating healthy, it's not about the food. And yet again, it's all about the food. So, if you know it's bad for you, why can't you stop eating it? Let's first start by talking about why food has this power over us. The first reason that people can't say no, that you can't say no, is that this hyper palatable food or super tasty food has such a high hedonic value in your brain that you are driven to desire it, seek it, work really hard to get it, and eat it. And you probably heard before that sugar is addicting. And this is why. You can see this brain picture here that shows you that the same parts of the brain, the same pleasure and reward centers of the brain are activated when people consume sugar as when they use cocaine. That's a pretty big deal. Of course, it doesn't have quite the same consequences that cocaine consumption does, but it certainly does cause problems. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about what happens, what this brain science shows us. It shows us that when we eat junk, when we eat sugar especially, but also fat and salt, we crave it more. So the way that scientists started studying this was in the brains of rats. And so in one particular study, which is depicted here, what the scientists did was they took two groups of rats. One group, they gave access to sugar for 12 hours a day. So basically, the rats could drink sugar water whenever they wanted for 12 hours a day. The other group could only had access to the sugar water for half an hour a day. So basically, the ones with the sugar water access for 12 hours a day could do what we would say is the equivalent of binging on sugar. And then they took the sugar water away. And they wanted to see just how long after that the rats who had been allowed to binge were really still sort of have this high desire or enhanced motivation to go ahead and get sugar. And so what they found was that the rats were willing to go ahead and do quite a bit of work to get access to that sugar for up to a month after the sugar was removed, and much more so than the rats that never had a chance to binge on sugar. And so what this shows us is that when a brain's been exposed to unlimited amounts of sugar for the better part of the day, it changes the biology of the brain such that it increases the amount of desire and the amount of work that someone's willing to do to get at this object of their desire. And the way they test this with rats is they'll first give them access to the sugar water. They don't have to do any work for it except walk over and drink it. And then they take it away and they'll see just how much work the rat will do. When they measure the way they measure that is they'll have it set up so that the rat has to push a lever in order to get the sugar water. And so the rats figure out pretty quickly what they have to do to get the sugar water. And they'll press the lever, 4 times if they have to get it. And the scientists will say, I wonder how many more times they'll push it. So they'll set up the experiment so that the rat now has to press the lever 7 times to get the sugar water. No problem. The rat will do that. And the scientists will keep increasing the number of times that lever needs to be pressed, or in other words, the amount of work that needs to be done by just continuing to increase it. So the rats will go ahead and keep pressing that lever up to 44 times to get the sugar water. And they'll work that hard for it for a month afterwards. So another thing we know, besides the fact that we're willing to work really hard, is that we're also willing to go to extreme danger to get this reward that sugar gives. So we know that's true with drug addicts, that they go through high risk behavior in order to obtain the drug. But it's also true with sugar, which is another piece of evidence suggesting that there can be something like a sugar addiction or food addiction. And what they did in this experiment is they set up the rat's cage so that it had two sides. One side, just the regular cage, access to regular rat chow food and water, and the other side of the cage contained, at the far end, sugar water. But the catch was that the floor of the cage was electrified. So in order for the rat to get the sugar water, it would have to walk across the electrified floor, risking pain and discomfort to get there. Now, there's no reason the rat would need to go there. There's perfectly good food and water on the non-electrified side of the cage. But guess what? The rats would go straight for the sugar water, no problem. No care for the electrified floor, the pain, the discomfort, and the risk to their lives in doing so. So, one more piece of evidence that this really highly palatable food is extremely desirable, and that we'll go to great lengths to get it. So another thing that happens with these highly palatable foods that we humans have access to is that brain scientists have designed these foods to be irresistible. And they do that in a couple of ways. One is they layer these tastes and textures one upon the other. And the three major components that make a food highly palatable and irresistible to us are fat and salt and sugar. And so you can probably imagine right now some foods that you have seen at restaurants, at grocery stores, maybe in your own kitchen, that have these things layered and that are quite tasty. And then another thing is that the food is loaded up. And that means that it can be loaded up with fat or salt or sugar or a combination of those. So for example, when we take a tortilla and we deep fry it to make tortilla chips or to make like a deep fried burrito type thing, we're loading that tortilla up with fat. Or when a chicken breast is processed so that it can be frozen and then reheated and still, have a good taste and texture, that chicken breast is usually injected with multiple needles at once, full of sugar water that possibly has some starch in it too. And we're told on the package, on the ingredients list, that these things are added to reduce shrinkage or keep the food fresh longer. And so that's also loading the food up with sugar and salt, things that we find irresistible. And it's also making the food a lot easier to chew, which makes us want to eat more quickly, and therefore eat more of it. So that brings us to the second reason you can't say no to this highly palatable, super tasty food. And that is that there's a large variety of these foods everywhere you look, everywhere you go. And I've put here for you some of the examples of some of the triggers that you might see. The way foods look, the way the packaging has been designed to be quite attractive, pretty, colorful, fun. Advertising is very suggestive, and it really brings us in, it pulls us in, and it puts us in this constant state of wanting, of desiring these foods. When we have this visual cue, driving down the street, looking in magazines, watching television, looking in our own kitchens, these things put us in a constant and perpetual state of wanting. And that drives our cravings as well. So if you look here in the upper left-hand corner, you can see this pizza type product, picture of a pizza type product. And this is a really great example of layering. So first of all, you've got the pizza crust that is probably, it's dough, but it probably has both fat and sugar added to it, even though you could make a pizza crust without doing that. Then you've got sauce, which again probably has oil or fat and sugar and salt added to it. Then you've got the cheese, fat, which has fat and salt in it, and the pepperoni, again, another great source of fat and salt. Great as in it has tons of it, not that it's good for you, obviously. And then the crust is made out of these little pretzel dogs, which, you know, the hot dog itself is full of sugar, salt, and fat. And then it's wrapped in this sweet dough that is then topped with this kosher salt in big pieces, which we also find highly palatable and very exciting to the taste. So, so it's this great variety of foods. We never have to get bored with this highly palatable food. When we do, we can move on right on to the next thing. There's tons of variety. And the concentration of these foods is high, right? They're everywhere. And then the concentration of those items, fat, sugar, and salt, is very high in each one of these foods. And they come to us in large quantities, large portion sizes, which we readily consume. And food scientists and food manufacturers know that our brains are triggered by these foods, by these highly palatable foods containing sugar, fat, and salt. And they're really good at their job in making these foods irresistible so that they grab your full attention, your vision, your sight, what you see, what you smell, what you taste, the texture is, the sounds you hear of the foods, right? Think of food commercials, for example, and they keep you in this constant state of wanting. And they're very successful at pulling in your attention and pulling in your dollars. And they're not, you know, out to get you as an individual or make you unhealthy. What they're out to do is sell food, and they're really good at doing it. The third reason that you can't say no to this highly palatable food that is everywhere and has you in a constant state of wanting, driving you to find the food, totally vulnerable. We, in this day and age, are so vulnerable to the messaging and to the stimulation of these highly palatable foods. And this list here shows you some of the things that increase our vulnerability. When we are hungry, we are particularly vulnerable to the messaging and to the cravings. When we have low blood sugar, even if it's not terribly low, but just a little bit low enough to trigger hunger, that makes us vulnerable. When we have stress, which most people who are alive today have stress, some of us manage it better than others, but it's there. And it weakens our ability to resist these unhealthy foods that are so appealing in some ways. When we are emotional, tired, or in pain, our ability to think clearly about food choices is also compromised. And so if you know a little bit about brain science, you know that you basically have two competing parts of your brain. You've got your prefrontal cortex, which is a really decision-making, executive power kind of a part of your brain. And then you have your older reptilian part of your brain that is more driven by urges and desires. And when we are well rested and well fed and not overly stressed or emotional or in pain, then that prefrontal cortex, that good decision-making professor side of our brain, it can make really good decisions and can make decisions like, I decided I was going to have a salad with fruit and beans for lunch. Much better than if you were experiencing those vulnerabilities. And when we do experience the vulnerabilities, that urge-driven part of our brain is much more in charge. And if we walk into the break room at work and we see someone's brought chips or donuts or some of these other highly palatable foods, we become very vulnerable to just grabbing that and eating that instead of, or in addition to, whatever healthy food we may have initially intended to eat. So what's the solution to these issues that drive us to eat foods that we really know are not healthy for us and that in some ways we really don't want to be eating? Well, the solution contains 3 main strategies that work. And I've seen this work with hundreds, maybe thousands of people that I've worked with. I teach about 5 classes a week right now, and all 3 of these things are employed in these long-term behavior change strategies. So one is we have to commit. In other words, we have to want to eat healthy. We have to want health for ourselves, and that's kind of a given. But sometimes we need to renew that commitment. It may be a daily renewal of that commitment. It might be every time we eat. It may be every few minutes, but we need to commit. We need to nourish ourselves, and we need to know ourselves. These are the 3 strategies that we know work. So on the commitment side, this has to do with willpower. And willpower is not the kind of thing that you either have it or you don't. Willpower is like a muscle. You build willpower. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. So there's a great book out by a woman who works out of Stanford, whose name is Kelly McGonigal. It's called The Willpower Instinct. And she talks about I will power, I won't power, and I want power. And one of the ways that you can really strengthen your willpower is by remembering why you care. Why do you want to eat healthy? Why do you want to put good things into your body? And in fact, a study was done where they looked at this very thing. They did a functional MRI, which means they looked at people's brains while they asked them to think about something. So they presented these individuals with food and asked them just to think about the healthfulness of the food. Was it healthy? Was it not healthy? They didn't ask them to choose the healthy food or anything like that. Just think about how healthful the food is. And in doing so, they really saw changes in the brain, in thought patterns. And there is some evidence to suggest that just doing this alone can help you make these better choices, these more executive decisions, less urge-driven decisions. The second strategy that we could use to reduce our cravings and the drive to consume these foods that are not healthy for us is to really nourish our body, to give our bodies what they need so that we're not hungry, so that we're not as vulnerable. The first thing we need is nutritious, slow carbohydrates. Now, what that means is that our brain uses carbohydrates as its primary source of fuel. And so if your blood sugar is low, if you don't have a good intake of carbs, you're going to be craving carbs. And so, again, if you eat a source of fast carbs or a high sugar food, that can cause your blood sugar to go up and then come crashing down, which can then cause you to crave sugar or be hungry and go seek out something sugary as well. So we want slow carbs. So this includes whole foods that are rich in fiber. So blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, apples, whole grains, things like that. Beans, lentils, excellent sources of carbohydrates and fiber that enter our system slowly and help keep our blood sugar, our mood, and our hunger balanced. The second thing we can do that really helps improve brain function and insulin function, which affects your blood sugar, your body weight, your cravings for sugar is by consuming foods that are rich in omega-3 fats every single day. And there are just a couple of good plant-based sources of omega-3 fats. The very best two sources are ground flax seeds and chia seeds. And there's some really easy, tasty ways that you can incorporate those into your daily food. And these days, they're easy to find at the grocery store, too. The third thing that you can do is to eat every 2 to 4 hours. If you go too long without eating and you allow yourself to get too hungry, your chances of craving and caving in and going for that junk food increase significantly. So you want to make sure you eat a combination of slow carbs and either protein or fat every 2 to 4 hours. Not huge portions, small portions, frequently throughout the day, kind of the 6 small meals throughout the day approach. And lastly, which is more easily said than done, is to abstain from these highly palatable foods most of the time. When you consume sugar, when you consume these highly stimulating combinations of sugar, salt, and fat, then you want them more. So, you know, the first week or two that you abstain from these kinds of foods can be a struggle. It can be difficult, and some people really experience the kind of withdrawal effects that you might expect from certain types of drugs or nicotine. But it's totally worth it to break free from the pull of those unhealthy foods. The third thing that you can do to improve your outcomes and reduce the amount of cravings you have is to nurture yourself and to find pleasurable activities that you can do every day. So what I'm suggesting is that you find pleasure in things other than food, right? Your food should still be enjoyable, but it shouldn't be your main go-to source of pleasure. And so you've got to find some other things that you enjoy, whether it's a hobby or exercise or social activity, but something that gives you joy and pleasure. The second thing is you want to plan for sleep. You've got to get enough sleep. When we don't get enough sleep, our prefrontal cortex is not driving the car very well. And that urge-driven part of our brain can take over. So really find ways to incorporate more sleep into your life. If the average adult, you probably know, needs about 8 hours a night, give or take an hour or so. The next thing is to put yourself first. This is not something that we're typically taught to do, but it is extremely important. And any time that you are taking care of yourself, you are giving yourself more energy, more love, more care. Whatever you put into yourself, you're then able to give back out to the world. If you are not taking care of yourself and you are not experiencing great health, then you are not going to be able to share your gifts and serve the people around you. And fourth, positive affirmations. This can be as simple as saying, I'm worth it, or saying something to yourself like, I eat a healthy diet every day, or I want to eat in a way that gives me energy, not in a way that stimulates my taste buds to the extreme. So, you know, each person has to come up with their own positive affirmation, but having a nice go-to mantra or thing that you can tell yourself every day or throughout the day to help you stay on track makes all the difference in your ability to stick with your plan. In order to be able to do all these things, you need the desire to do it. You need the support of at least one person and consistency to change your habits. And these things can all be done, and they may seem simple enough, but oftentimes we need help. In fact, right now I am teaching a class that lasts 30 weeks long. The reason it lasts so long is because it takes a long time for us to change our habits and to get control of these cravings and so forth. So if you feel that you are in need of some support, some guidance, and help staying committed, I am offering right now a new class, Healthy Habits for Life. It's a 12-week-long class. And the class is online, which is really convenient. That means that most people can do it. You know, you can show up to the live modules, or you can do it on your own time whenever you're available. But the course will really give simple step-by-step instructions each week and guidance on how to create your goals and an actionable plan to reach them. If you do the class, you get access to worksheets, guides, videos, accountability, group support, and more. And I know, researchers know that these are the things that you need in order to create lasting change. Everyone's probably been in a situation where you have the best of intentions to eat healthy, or maybe to lose weight, or to make some kind of change in your habits. But somewhere along the way, we sort of fall off the wagon with those. And that's human nature, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. What it might mean is that you didn't get the right kind of guidance. You didn't get the right kind of support. You didn't have the accountability that you needed. And so this program really would give you all of those things and more. Plus, I have some bonuses built in as well, because I know these things can really help solidify a person's success. They include meal plans each week, recipes, easy recipes, inexpensive recipes, and then a weekly live Q&A with me. So you have a chance to ask the dietitian all your burning questions, get real help on whatever it is that is affecting you. And you can see hopefully in the right-hand side there of the webinar jam window, an offer, which I'm offering only to people on this webinar right now. And it is, for the first 3 people who sign up today, I'm offering a bonus nutrition assessment and personalized plan, which has a $125 value. So I'll talk to you, take your information, your specific needs, your requirements, health history, that sort of thing, and put together a plan just for you to help you reach your goals in a way that works in your life, in your daily routine. So go ahead and take advantage of that if you'd like. The other thing is, I set this course up at a price that I hoped would be accessible to most people, which is just $10 a week. You know, it's cheaper than just a few lattes in 1 week. And the class is for 12 weeks long, so it gives you a really good amount of time to start creating this lasting change while you're getting the support, while you're getting the guidance, while you're getting the accountability. And though it's 12 weeks long, each week the module should take you somewhere between 30 minutes to 3 hours, and it really depends what you put into it. So it's a 12-week commitment, but it's not a lot of time each week. But it's enough time to make a significant difference in your life and in your outcomes in your life. So, as I said before, the course will give you instructions each week. We'll be setting goals. You'll get an actionable plan to help you reach your goals. So you're going to know exactly what you should be doing for yourself each day in order to create these new habits and to be able to break free from being driven to eat by your cravings and by your vulnerability to this great variety of highly desirable foods out there that look good, smell good, taste good, and really pull you in. I'm opening up the chat now. If you are interested in asking me any questions, I'd love to hear those now. If you have any questions about the program, if you have any questions about what you've heard so far today on the webinar, I'd love to be able to help you out. And as you can see over there in the right-hand side, this offer expires soon. The price that I have set right now for doing the course for $120 is a temporary lowering of the price. The value is somewhere around $600 for this course, but as I said, I'm really lowering it temporarily to make it accessible to as many people as possible. And then this bonus of working with me one-on-one and getting your own personalized plan is also a really great bonus. And you could take advantage of it just by registering now. You can just click that button and register if you're interested. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now. Okay, so I'm getting a question about the meal plans and what they'll be like. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the meal plans I typically do are 2 to 3 days meal plans that you repeat throughout the week. So if I give you a 3-day meal plan to cover 6 or 7 days, and you're going to repeat each day about 1 time, which in truth makes following the meal plan so much easier than when you get a 7-day meal plan. When you have a 7-day meal plan with different foods every day, you end up buying so many groceries, spend so much time cooking, cleaning up in the kitchen, and it just requires so much effort and energy on your part. So I just do the 3-day meal plans, and you can repeat in whatever way you like. And I give you instructions on how to maximize your time so that you aren't spending all your time cooking and preparing food and shopping and all that kind of stuff. So I'll teach you ways to follow the meal plans and also make the food ahead of time, portion it out ahead of time so that it's ready to go when you're ready to eat, and you've saved yourself time and effort. And the meal plans always contain foods that are mostly easy to get, not terribly expensive, and some of the foods might take you just outside of what you would typically consider, but there's always ways to adapt. But it also gives you a really good opportunity to try some new things. You know, maybe you find some new things that you like. So there's that. And usually I only include, 1 to 3 recipes per week. I don't want to overwhelm anybody with all these new recipes that take time to figure out. But if you try 1 new recipe a week, you're doing pretty good. By the end of the month, you probably could have a whole new repertoire of meals that you could serve in any given week. And that's a really helpful thing to have as well. Okay, I have a great question here. You mentioned about needing support from others, but I'm not sure my husband will be helpful. Any tips? Oh yeah, that's a great question. I get that a lot in my classes, where one person in a family wants to make some changes and not everybody is on board at home. And that's just the reality of our lives now. And there's a couple different ways to handle that. One thing we talk about in the course is exactly how to communicate with the people you live with or eat with about what your goals are and how they can support you. And so that can help. You can make a lot of headway that way. But then we'll also talk about what to do if you are in a situation where maybe you want to eat differently than the people in your house want to eat. And while they're willing to support you in some ways, maybe they're not willing to support you by changing the way they eat. And so just to give you a little bit of an idea is that a lot of times you can, even if people are eating somewhat differently, you can find commonalities in the kinds of foods that you'll eat. So for example, let's say that you decided you were going to eat, more plant-based foods, more vegetables, more fruits, less meat, less fat, less cheese, things like that. But the other people in your household weren't willing to do that. One thing you could do is, let's say you're going to have tacos, okay? You can, create the taco fixings that contain things for everybody. So you can have your shredded lettuce, your cut tomatoes, your fresh guacamole, your lime juice, maybe some vegetarian, no fat added refried beans or some black beans. And then if there's somebody in the house that still wants to have the taco meat of ground beef, you can do that, or carnitas or whatever other kind of, meat and cheese and sour cream they want. Great. So you have choices. You can pick what you want, they can pick what they want, but it's all the same meal. And even you could do a taco salad for yourself, and then if anybody who wanted to have use those ingredients for other things like tacos or nachos or burritos, could do that. So that's just one example of how you make this kind of thing work, even though if you're not getting the full amount of support that you're really hoping for. Okay, great. Just somebody go ahead and write in the chat box there and let me know if you are able to see that link on the right. If it works for you, if you click on the register now link, if you're getting the results that you hope for. If you're having any trouble, just let me know. We're going to end the webinar in just a couple of minutes. The offer will remain for you to get the class for just $120 or $10 a week for 12 weeks, plus the bonuses, which are the weekly meal plans, the recipes, the weekly live Q&A, live, not in person, but live online. I'll do a webinar each week where it'll be interactive and people can ask questions and talk about what's going on and, maximize the experience. Those bonuses plus the bonus nutrition assessment and personalized plan, working one-on-one with me. That's what's expiring in just 17, 18 minutes from now. So if you got any questions, now is the great time to ask them. I would love to help you in any way that I can. I have a question, a really good question here. If I have allergies, can you build them into the meal plan? Absolutely. So the meal plans things can always be substituted. If there's something in the meal plan that you don't like let's say you're allergic to strawberries and strawberries in the meal plan, you can easily substitute that out with blueberries or raspberries or cherries or banana or some other kind of fruit that you do like and that you are not allergic to. So that is definitely something. And I do have some experience with food allergies and intolerances and preferences. So I can certainly give you individualized suggestions too in the online support group that's part of this group as well. I'll be in there every day responding to your questions, your comments, giving you encouragement and support. And so that would be a really easy way to address any individual needs that you may have. All right. Again, I want to thank you so much for being here today for this webinar. I hope that you got a lot out of it, that you are leaving here with some real strategies that you can employ to commit to your health and strengthen your willpower, to nourish your body by eating whole food sources of carbohydrates, omega-3 rich fats, and consuming food every 2 to 4 hours, small portions of food every 2 to 4 hours, and help you really break free from the highly palatable foods that are so easily accessible to us these days. And then also on ways to nurture yourself and get pleasure out of things other than food. I'd love to be able to help you in doing this and work with you during the course of this 12-week class, which is going to be just a great experience. Just to give you a little recap, because it looks like the screen share is a little bit blurry on the webinar end of things, so I'm just going to share it with you again. This course is 12 weeks long. Each week there's a new module that you'll get online, which includes a video, a workbook, worksheets, guides. Then we also have a group support online that's private, and we will have the weekly live Q&A session with me. And each week you'll get meal plans and recipes. And this whole program, which is really reasonably priced at just $10 a week, is also 100% satisfaction guaranteed. So if you finish the course and you go through and you do the workbooks and you look at the videos and you follow the plans and you're just not satisfied, I will give you your money back. No problem, no questions asked. I just ask that you give it a go, and I'm so sure that the program can work for people that I'm willing to do this money back guarantee. Okay. Again, thank you for joining in on the webinar today, and please feel free to email me any questions you might have. My email address is kimosmith@mac.com. Mac is M-A-C, like the computer. You can check out my website at kimosmith.com, or you can check me out on Facebook. You attended the webinar today, you will be receiving an email later that contains a meal plan that will help you reduce your cravings. So the things that I mentioned in the Nourish slide about the slow carbs and the omega-3 fats and getting off the other kinds of foods, I'm going to actually be sending you a meal plan, 3-day meal plan that will help you do all those things. So just look in your email for that. It'll be a link that you click on, and then an email will be sent directly to you with the PDF of that meal plan. So thanks for being here today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go on out there, take great care of yourself, because you're totally worth it.